Okay, so today I'm finally tackling a few little home projects that have been on my to-do list for way too long. Nothing huge, but the kind of things that just quietly bother you every time you walk past them. This video actually took me 3 days to film, but for day one, I'm starting with this plastic pot that I actually keep my faux olive tree in next to our couch. I actually found this pot at Walmart last year and it was such a good find because of the size and the shape. The only thing that I did not love about it was the color. This came in this really bright white, and I am not a bright white girl. I tend to gravitate toward warm whites and off whites, something that feels a little softer and cozier, especially in the living room. But the price was great and the size was perfect, so I went ahead and bought it, knowing that one day I would eventually paint it, and today is finally that day. So I brought the pot into the garage, and I'm starting with the base color using some Rust-Oleum in a satin finish that I already had on hand. One of my goals for all of these projects is to use as much of what I already had on hand as possible, so I'm not constantly buying more products, and at the same time I'm not wasting what's already sitting on my shelves. So as I'm putting on this first coat, I'm not trying to be absolutely perfect because I do know that I'm gonna do at least 2 coats. And for plastic especially, I would much rather do a couple of lighter coats than one really heavy coat that might run or get globby. So once I got that first coat on the pot, I went ahead and set it aside to dry and moved on to project number 2, which were my candlestick holders. I do like to work in layers like this so that I can keep the day moving while everything else is drying. Although I do love the black that these candlestick holders originally came in, along with the shape of them, but I did really want to warm them up and bring in some of that soft metallic gold that I've been slowly incorporating throughout my house. I also felt like it would match better with the new mirror that I bought that I will be showing you guys very soon. And for these, I'm just using a metallic gold spray paint, but just like with the pot, I'm trying to keep these coats nice and even, slowly working my way around the candlesticks so I don't miss any weird angles. Again, I'm not stressing about perfection on the first pass. The first coat is really just to get the base color down, and then the second coat usually smooths everything out and gives it that nice finish. So once I had the pot and both candlesticks sprayed, I left them in the garage to dry and went ahead to move on to what I thought was going to be my next fun project, a DIY canvas. So this is where things did not necessarily go according to plan. I had ordered some material specifically for this canvas, and I did measure the canvas before ordering it, but when I opened the package and laid out the fabric on the canvas, it was way too small for what I needed from it. Like, not even close. I don't know if I misread something or if the listing was off, but either way, this material was not going to work. And on top of that, I didn't even have access to my husband's nail gun until the next day, so even if the material had been the right size, I wouldn't have been able to fully finish this project this day anyway. So I decided to just put the canvas away and pack the fabric back up so I could return the material the next day, and decided that I'm just gonna have to save this project for day 2. The silver lining though is that by the time I wrapped up all of that, the first coat of the paint on the pot and the candlestick holders were dry and ready for the second coat. So I went ahead and set everything back up on my sawhorses and just kept moving forward with coat number 2. And this is the coat where everything starts to look really good. Full coverage, no patches, and the color really starts to come through. I find it really satisfying at this stage because you can finally see what you were imagining in your head. And just like I did with the first coat, I'm not trying to overload the pieces with too much paint all at once so that I don't get any drips or runs. And once I got that second coat finished, I went ahead and let everything sit in my garage to dry. And while that was happening, I went back inside to work on hanging a new mirror that I bought actually several weeks ago from Amazon. This mirror is so pretty. It has this abstract, curvy shape that I just fell in love with. And even though it's not a standard rectangle or circle, I really liked how interesting it looked. I think it's because this mirror is not so common that I liked it that much more. But because of the odd shape, Hanging it was definitely a little more of a challenge than just using one center hook. And for this project, I decided to use monkey hooks to hang it, which are super convenient, but the trick is getting the placement just right, especially when the mounts on the back aren't at the very top. To figure out where to put the hooks, I ran some masking tape from the mounting points on the back of the mirror up to the top edge, making sure to keep the tape as straight as I possibly could, so I would then be able to see where the center of the mounts would be, which were the first marks that I needed to make on the wall. After that, I just measured down a few inches from those top marks according to how far down the mounts were from the top on each side. This process was a little bit hard for me to figure out how exactly to explain it to you all, so hopefully I didn't confuse you too much. Once my marks were on the wall, I was able to then install the monkey hooks, which only took a few seconds per hook, and then I was able to start the whole process of trying to actually get the mirror onto the hooks, which was a whole nother struggle in itself. I think it was because the mounting brackets on this mirror were really meant to be used alongside of a screw instead of a hook. I think that's why I kept hooking the mirror onto the bottom edge of the bracket instead of on the actual part that was designed to hold the weight. There was one time that I thought I actually had it mounted, but I put just a little bit of pressure on the mirror to test it and it slid right off, so that was my sign that it was definitely not mounted correctly. So I tried again, and I just took my time trying to feel for that catch on the hooks, and after a couple of attempts I finally got it secured in place. This definitely took a little bit of time and a lot of patience, but honestly that ended up working out perfectly because it gave the painted pieces in the garage even more time to fully dry. Now that I got the mirror hung up, I headed back out to the garage for the final step on my plastic pot, which was adding that stone texture finish, which is going to be mistake number 2 of this video already. So let me explain. I actually had 2 different stone textured spray paints already on hand. One was more of a brown and the other was a gray stone finish. Somehow the caps on the 2 cans had gotten mixed up and I didn't realize it before I started spraying. So I grabbed what I thought was the brown stone texture based on the lid, and it was actually the gray. I didn't notice it until a couple of days later after I had already finished this project. I will say though that the gray stone isn't terrible, but it's definitely not the warm, earthy look that I was going for. So I think in the future, the near future, I might go back and add some of the brownstone texture over the top to warm it up. But the lesson to learn here, especially if you're newer to spray painting, is to not just trust the caps on your spray paint. Always read the label on the actual can. But once I finished that final textured coat, I decided to leave the pot in the garage overnight to dry completely. But by this point, the candlesticks were completely dry and ready to come back inside. And I was really happy with how the gold turned out. No runs, no missed spots, just a nice even finish. I was pretty proud of myself. And I ended up pairing them with these twisted candles that I found on Amazon, and I just love how they look together. And once the candlesticks were set up, I gave the mirror a quick wipe down just to remove the smudges and fingerprints that I accidentally got on there while I was installing it. And that is pretty much a wrap for day 1. But be sure to stick around because you're not going to want to miss what happens on day 2. It definitely wasn't a day of huge renovations or anything dramatic, but these are the kinds of small changes that slowly make a home feel more like you. And honestly, it felt really, really good to finally check these few items off of my list. And just like that, we have entered day 2 of my little home project marathon. And I started the day by running a couple of errands. The first stop was returning that fabric from yesterday that definitely did not work out. And after that, I headed over to Walmart to try again. I actually spent a good amount of time in the fabric section because I kept going back and forth between a few different options. There was this fabric that I really liked. It had almost a stone-like pattern to it, just full of soft neutrals, a little bit of beige, a little bit of gray, and I thought it looked really good. I just wasn't so sure how it was going to work out for what I needed it for. But the only thing that held me back was not knowing how I was going to hide the edges cleanly on the canvas, since I was going to need more than one piece. So I kept on looking, and I did find this material that was 2 yards, but I felt like that was still a little too short. Eventually, I found the same material in the bulk section, which worked out perfectly because I was then able to get the exact amount I needed, which was also the cheaper option, so bit of a win-win. After that, I made a quick stop to the floral section, and this is where I made a very unexpected decision. I originally went in thinking that I was going to stick with greens like olive or sage tones because that's kind of what I've been gravitating toward throughout my home. But then I saw these burgundy stems, and I don't know what it was, but when I looked at these stems, I just got this warm, cozy, peaceful feeling and just immediately felt like these were the ones. After all, warm, cozy, peaceful is definitely the atmosphere I want for my home, so it really made sense. So I went ahead and grabbed this bundle of stems to try it out in my entryway, especially because I felt like I needed something taller to balance out the visual weight of the mirror on the other side. And by the way, I'm curious, are you someone who sticks to a color palette, or do you just kind of buy whatever catches your eye? I started by mixing up a solution of water and Mod Podge. I used about a gallon of water and half of this container of Mod Podge. And then I fully submerged the fabric so it could soak up as much of the solution as possible. The goal being for the fabric to harden and hold its shape once it dries. While that was soaking, I went ahead and moved on to building the frame, which, I'm not gonna lie, was a bit of a learning curve. I've never built anything like this before, so there was a lot for me to figure out as I went. Instead of taking exact measurements, I basically used the canvas itself as my guide. So I held the trim pieces up to the edges, marked where I needed to cut, and used my table saw to get the angles. It wasn't the most technical approach, I'll admit, but it worked. I also just used some cheap clamps to hold everything in place while I was making my marks because I definitely didn't have enough hands for all of this. And once I had my cuts, I assembled the frame using wood glue and brad nails, and for the most part, everything came together pretty well. Except for one corner. There was about a 1/4 inch gap that I didn't notice until after I had already secured all the other sides. So instead of taking everything apart, I just worked with it. I ended up cutting a small piece from one of my scrap boards that I was then able to fit into the gap, glue it, and secure it with a couple of nails like I did the rest of the corners, which actually ended up working out really well. Now this next part, definitely a lesson learned. When I flipped the frame over to add some support braces on the back, I used some wooden shims that we already had on hand. I cut them at an angle to fit on each corner and then started securing them. But I didn't realize how long the brad nails were that I was using. So when I shot the first one in, it literally came through the front of the frame by like an inch. Yeah, not ideal. At that point, I immediately stopped using the nail gun and switched over to my staple gun instead. And later on, my husband did help me get the nail out and fix it, so everything worked out fine. Thank God. So let this serve as a reminder to really know your tools before you use them. So once the frame was built, I went back over to the canvas and was getting ready to lay the fabric over it, but then I noticed that you could see the original artwork straight through the material. So I had to pause, put the fabric back into the solution so it wouldn't dry out while I spray painted the canvas. I ended up just using the same paint that I did on my pot just to neutralize everything and give it a clean base. And while that was drying in the sun, I took some time to sand down the frame. I really just wanted to smooth out that problem corner and any other imperfections that I could see. And after that, I went in to fill in any gaps and nail holes with wood filler. After a quick dinner and some time with my husband, I brought the canvas back into the garage and finally got to lay the fabric over it. And this part honestly was really fun, but just a lot of trial and error. If this is something you're interested in doing, you really just want to move the fabric around and shape it, adjust it until it looks how you want it to. So once I got it to a point that I was happy with, I left it there to dry overnight so that it could fully harden. Then I moved back over to the canvas frame and gave it another light sanding just to clean up the wood filler, and at that point it was ready for paint. But this is the corner that I actually had to patch. I think it came out really good. I did slightly overcorrect right here in this area, but overall I think that corner turned out really good considering what I was working with. I also had to fill this seam just a little bit. There was a little bit of a gap with wood filler, and then I also filled all the holes like you saw me do earlier, and all the holes came out really good as well. And as you may have already noticed, I didn't actually have drop cloths for this project, so I figured I could just make some good use out of some old curtains that I was originally planning to get rid of, but since they worked out so well, I'm definitely keeping them for future projects. But I also set the frame on plastic cups so that I could get full coverage without it sticking to the ground, which also worked really well. But a quick tip for you, just in case someday you may do some spray painting outside, especially in your front yard, I did make sure to move my car out of the driveway before spraying because I didn't want to risk getting any overspray onto my car, per my husband's advice after I had already done a lot of painting in the garage earlier. And once the paint dried, I went in with this decorative glaze in Java Brown to create that faux wood grain look. I was really inspired by some videos that I saw online, and I have to say, it really is as easy as they made it look. The glaze is very forgiving, so if you don't really like the way it's turning out, you can literally just go back over it and adjust it until you get the look that you want. The biggest thing though, I would say, is your base color. I used a very light off-white, and while I do like how it turned out, it wasn't exactly the tone that I had in mind. So if you're going for a specific type of wood tone, I would definitely recommend identifying the two main colors or main shades of the wood that you see in the wood grain that you're going for. So for example, the wood finish that I was going for had a brownish gray undertone, like this example that you see here. But with the base color that I used, to me it feels very one-dimensional, I think is the best way to describe it. Because to me, the brown really takes over as compared to the example I just showed you. Not bad by any means at all, but not exactly what I was shooting for. The next morning, everything was completely dry and I could not wait to get everything put together. And now that I had better lighting, I was able to get a better look of the frame and the paint job that I was able to give it, and I was pretty happy with it, to be honest. Even though I would have liked to have had a different base color for it, I'm really surprised and happy with how well it turned out. But you guys would have to let me know down below, which one would you prefer? Would you prefer the lighter base color or the taupe base color? But before I could get the canvas set into the frame, I needed to staple the fabric to the back of the canvas, trim off the excess, and then I would be able to test to see if it would fit into the frame. And once I got that all done, this is the moment of truth. Will this canvas fit in the frame that I made? All that's left for me to do is test it out. And good news for me, it did. Perfectly. I was honestly so relieved. Whenever I was putting the canvas into the frame, I was so nervous and just praying that it was still going to fit with this new layer of material on it. So I was so relieved when I found out that it did. But just before I went inside to hang it up on the wall, I wanted to secure it, so I pre-drilled some small holes into the back of the braces and used a couple of short screws at the top corners, just for a little extra support. Then this moment finally came when I was able to bring it inside and mount it on my wall. So I just held it up on the wall and figured out my placement. I did make sure to use a level though for this one, just placing it on the top of the canvas to make sure that my marks were level. And I went ahead and marked my spots and installed the same monkey hooks that I used for the mirror in my entryway. And once I hung it up, wouldn't you know it, another speed bump. Once I hung it up, I immediately realized that it was way too high. So I went ahead, took it down, adjusted my measurements and rehung it, and just like that, this project was finally finished. And at this point, I thought I was completely done, but then I looked over at the clock on the wall just to the right of the canvas, and it was clashing, to say the least. It did not match at all. It had more of a farmhouse, whitewashed look, and next to the new canvas, it just was not working. And this clock is a pretty good sized clock, but it's not so big that I thought it would take too long to do. So I decided, why not just fix it now? I ended up taking it out to my garage, lightly sanding the plastic frame, spraying it with the same paint, and then applying the same glaze technique that I did with my canvas frame, which completely transformed this piece. It honestly looks like a totally different clock, like something you would never guess came from the dollar store of all places. Yes, I bought this at the dollar store a few years ago for $12, ironically. Yes, $12 at the dollar store. And just before I get ready to share the final reveal, I went ahead and did some finishing touches by adding some moss to this olive tree that I did also fill with pool noodles, just using the same technique as I showed you guys in my porch makeover video. I did test some leftover green moss that I had first, and it was just way too bright. It looked a little too artificial for me. I mean, on my front porch, I feel like it worked really well, just not inside. So I went ahead and bought some brown moss from Walmart instead, which is a lot more neutral, and I feel like it blends better without pulling attention away from the tree itself. And once I got it all installed, I was so glad that I went with that decision. Overall, I am really happy with how everything turned out. The canvas and the clock matching made a huge difference. The olive tree finally looks finished after all these months, and I absolutely love how the entryway came together with the mirror, the candlesticks, and those burgundy stems, which completely changed my mind on my color palette. I do still have a few things that I want to tweak, like the different tones of gold in that area. They're all slightly different, so I would really love to know your thoughts on that. Would you try to match everything exactly, or which gold would you stick with? Should I try to redo the gold on the mirror to match the other two pieces better, or should I change the gold on the candlestick holders? Let me know what you think. Also, if this video gave you any ideas or helped you in any way, I would love for you to subscribe and join this community that I'm building here. I have a lot more projects coming, like repainting my nightstands and a dresser that I actually just found for free, along with the next phase of my garage declutter / makeover video that I've been talking about. So there's definitely a lot more to come. But with all that being said, I would love to hear your thoughts about how I did on the comments below, what you liked, and even what you would do differently. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.